Meg's question?
Meg has a chat.
Oh, okay, great. Let's do Meg's chat question.
Meg says, given that there is no me, no them, no good, no bad, how do we work with what my little bit of consciousness sees as clear difference between what I perceive as the love and hate present in the world now?
What beautiful question, Meg. Thank you for that. So this is a very profound question, because there is immense suffering all around us, and we don't want to in any way dismiss that or not recognize that or engage with that. If we can learn to come from the love and compassion that we feel for anyone, if we can feel loving compassion and come from the loving compassion for anyone who's suffering, then the vibration of love and compassion is the most beautiful, powerful vibration or energy that can emanate in this universe, and that has, when it emanates into everyone and everything. So it does contribute to a shift that may not be obvious to us. And then on a personal level, if it's available to us to act skillfully to benefit someone who's suffering, then hopefully we feel motivated and we act on that. And so in my work, my work involves being a psychologist working with people with chronic health conditions, chronic pain, cancer, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, brain injuries, all kinds of very troubling health conditions, and they suffer a lot from that. And if I can remain centered in and come from a sense of love and compassion, then I find that I can be skillful in helping them, and I don't absorb their suffering. My love grows by living from that love and giving that love in the way that perhaps it can be received. And I'm just using myself as a real example because every person has a different set of circumstances in which they can serve. But ultimately, as an individual, we are here to serve. That's ultimately the realization is that as an individual expression, my expression is to serve in any and every way that I can, and serving out of compassion, a feeling of love that emanates and is expressed in our life, in our actions, in our words, and in our thoughts. So there's no lack of opportunity, obviously, for us to grow that compassion and that expression of that compassion and that love in every way that we can. Hopefully there's another answer, but I'll just mention it. This is one that Joel sometimes uses. Because we ask, well, why can't there just be a life that has no suffering? Why can there be a life where there's no hate? And as Joel has pointed out, so this is the play of consciousness, and it includes everything that could possibly happen. Her creativity is not limited in any way by human conceptions. And like Joel has said, if the story of the Prince Charming and whichever of those stories, if it starts out with they met and they lived happily ever after, if that was the whole story, if there wasn't some drama or some difficulty, some huge challenges that came and some suffering, then it would not be a full expression of what life can be. So this life is her play, and it includes everything that's going on. And of course, our minds want it to be different, but nonetheless, it is what it is. It's the full drama is here.
The other thing is a comment more than a question, is when you had us do the honey, I could feel my tongue wanting to merge with it. And then the honey came and it saturated it and then it overwhelmed it. It became the honey. But the same thing happened with the chanting. I could feel my body wanting to merge with it and then feel the vibrations of it coming. So thank you for that experience. That was
Thank you.
wonderful.
One of the things that you just said is so beautiful. And it's because sometimes I think in spiritual process, there can be somehow a belittlement of the yearning or the desire, right? But the very nature of creation is the yearning to create, right? So that was just beautiful the way you named it. Like it was there. The energy of that was there.
I could feel it rising up, wanting to greet it and merge with it.
Yeah. So it creates this exquisite receptivity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That it
another
dissolves.
a naming of that that's very consistent, that's from the Sufi tradition, is that I was a hidden treasure that longed to be known. So all of that, all of this is that hidden treasure wanting to be known.
And if nobody else wants to talk, the other thing that I really like is that you brought up all expressions of life. What we typically say is the suffering is not something to banish from our lives or expect that it's going to vanish from our lives, but our reception to it changes, like a paradox change.
Yes.
So thank you for that too.
That piece I resonate more because I get terrified that at moments I feel something or something's coming on and then it's like, holy shit, pull back. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more. I mean, you guys seem like you have very different experiences of how things have, but in your case, there's a terror, a fear there related to that death piece that I just want to hear more about.
We have had and continue to have very different kind of engagements with this infinite mystery, although Kimberly has some very strong descriptions of that terror. I don't know if you want to say a little bit.
Yeah. We were talking about it in the car on the way down here. So I was on a retreat on Orcas Island, I don't know, 20 years ago, before the kids were born. And we were doing this really powerful interpersonal meditation practice. And during this retreat, the complete story of I fell like dominoes. Like it was like everything I thought I knew to be true was experienced as purely a construct. And in that like complete dissolving, like utter and complete dissolving of every structure of self-defining that I had become accustomed to over 30 years, in that falling away, there was this immense terror that arose. And literally, I'm not exaggerating at all, for 2 solid weeks, day and night, my nervous system trembled because no longer was the ground that I was used to standing on reliable. So there was utter and complete terror in that. I didn't have any choice to pull back. Like I didn't have, there was no lever for me to pull back in that process, in that space. And thank goodness I came home to this guy and he's like, oh, you're fine. Right? You know what I mean? Like I had the container to allow that dissolution to mature and fructify, right? Now, one thing I would say in my experience and what I've seen over the years multiple times is that in the process of when that terror emerges, make sure I say this correctly. So the ego structure, the story of I, right, the self-limiting, defining structure, which is completely functional. It helps us get around in this world, right? But it's purely it's conceptual. So the whole structure of the story of I, in my experience, the glue of that is terror.
It's fear.
It's the fear of non-existence. That's actually what holds the thing together. So when that begins to dissolve or fall apart or be seen through, or to use your verbs and nouns and adverbs or whatever, when that begins to dissolve, what's released is the fear. So that's that invitation to stay with that too. Does that make sense to you, John? Yeah. So that it actually is part of the structure that has to be lived through in
And
that
then
process.
Shiva, so the word for this terror is Bhairava, which is a name of Shiva. And if in the Indian model, there's creation, there's that which comes into being, it's sustained for a while, but then it dissolves. And Shiva he's the dissolver. He's the one who, but is considered the dissolver of sorrow and fear ultimately, because when we realize that what is being released is not what we really are, but just a temporary expression, that's when we reach the freedom of no longer needing to hold on to anything.
It just brings to mind this particular discussion is like in the shamanic practices of the highlands and the Andes. We go through the initiations. A jaguar is a large being, spirit being antitypical type, and part of that is you're ripped to shreds and you die.
Yep.
You die, and you go through the terror of dying to be released, to being who you are, who you communicate. Non-physical world.
Beautiful, thank you. So this is, every tradition has this. Yeah. And I think that's the ultimate meaning of the crucifixion, actually. Because the personal, individual self has to die. And for us to realize that that which really is will not die.
But that narrative isn't always a conscious narrative. As a matter of fact, it's probably mostly unconscious, built of all the things. Maybe at the moment of certain things it was conscious, and that just became part of the water I'm swimming in. To me, that's what the sense of self is that entire, whatever you want to call the environment of all those self notions that then become the sense of self. So it's interesting you put the sense first and then the narrative after.
So the narrative structures the sense and limits it more formally. So for example, you have had, I suspect, experiences when you just feel like fully yourself, like this is Mark, right? You have a full sense of you, right? Well,
Sure,
sometimes.
sure,
And then
yeah.
you probably have moments when your sense of self is not limited to the edges of your skin,
Sure, fair enough. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And then the narrative is going to structure the sense of Mark defined by the perceived boundaries of the skin in a more structured and refined way.
I see.
Do you see?
Yeah. And
So-
all these stages
so
are refining down. Or
They're
up.
all refining down or up. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's an involution and an evolution happening spontaneously all the time. I said only the guru offers shaktipat.
But I'm asking if you do at your center. No.
It happens.
Does it happen?
It happens.
It happens.
For many
okay.
But we don't
people,
do
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's certainly not something we're doing.
Okay, so
But the lineage does flow, so that does happen.
But do your devotees, do they have to do a preparation or initiation to receive it?
First of all, we have no devotees.
We have some friends.
Okay, do your friends.
Yeah, so it's not any kind of formal initiation but there's, there's an openness and if the receptivity is there, then and if the timing is right, and if whatever else needs to be at place, then things unfold that way.